Welcome, everybody. You have found your way to the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. We are a Rotary Club based in the San Francisco Bay Area of Northern California with members all over the world. And we are excited every week to bring stories of innovation, education, and entrepreneurship, especially as they all relate to service, to our members and our guests. And so what we hope you will find over the course of the next 30 minutes is lots of ideas that will prompt you to take kind of insights back to your club and say, hey, we could be doing this. How can we make good things happen for Rotary and for our communities here, there, and everywhere? Our guest today is with ShelterBox USA, and I am going to pass along the proper introduction of Alan Monroe to our president-elect and webmaster and all-around cool guy, Mitty Chang. Mitty.
Awesome. Thank you, Russian. It's my honor today to introduce Alan Monroe. Alan is the interim executive director of ShelterBox USA, providing leadership to the U.S. affiliate of the rapidly growing international disaster relief organization we know. So Alan first discovered ShelterBox at the Rotary International Convention in Salt Lake City, Utah in 2007. He was drawn to ShelterBox's mission of providing shelter, warmth, and dignity to people impacted by disasters. Alan immediately recognized that his Eagle Scout and other life experiences had groomed him to become a ShelterBox response team member. As a response team member, Alan delivers aid to families in need and has been deploying in the disasters in the U.S., Peru, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Taiwan, Haiti, Guatemala, Indonesia, and much more. Alan's prior experience includes serving as a marketing director for a large heating and air company, online sales manager for a daily newspaper, and partner in a company that built aerial maps of state forests. He earned his bachelor's degree in communications and Spanish language from Flagler College and his master's of arts in international affairs from Florida State University. Alan now lives in Sarasota, Florida with his wife, Casey. Alan, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and take the floor.
All right, well, such a pleasure to be with everybody today, and I think one of the first things I'm going to do is shorten my bio. Thank you, Mitty. I appreciate the warm welcome. And, Mitty and I actually, at that 2007 convention, when I first found out about ShelterBox, we were at the same convention, both Rotaractors at the pre-convention, and it's pretty cool how essentially, Rotary can bring people together. I just want to verify if folks can see my screen right now.
Looking good, looking good.
All right, wonderful. Well, again, I think, when we look at, the good work that, that Rotary does in bringing people together, not only did Mitty and I find each other at the Salt Lake City Convention, but we were both speakers at a convention, our district conference just a couple of months ago in Arizona, and it's weird how it does that. But I think one of the things about Rotary that really brings us all together, at least what binds us all together, is what Rotary is all about, the motto of Rotary, which is service above self. And to me, I firmly believe that whether it be an e-club, an in-person club, whether we're here for networking or other opportunities, what really binds us together, the glue that binds us together as Rotarians, is deeply rooted in service. And one of the things I like to talk about when we talk about ShelterBox is just how, through my experience in the organization, I've really come to appreciate and better understand what service above self truly means, and I look forward to sharing that with you all today. So, what is ShelterBox? For all of you who have not heard about the organization before, we are the organization that fills the gap after a major disaster or a humanitarian crisis. ShelterBox is an international disaster relief organization that provides emergency shelter and supplies to families who have been displaced as a result of tsunamis, earthquakes, pretty much any type of disaster that you can think of, including floods, but also drought and famine, in addition to humanitarian crises like the one that's being carried out in the Syrian refugee area, or Syrian region of the world. We are an official project partner with Rotary International. We're the only organization that Rotary International has partnered with for the disaster relief component of providing aid around the world, and we're very proud of that partnership and look forward to a long and fruitful one with Rotary. What do we provide? What type of equipment do we provide in ShelterBox? And you can see kind of a representation here. Typically, the type of equipment that we do send is found in a big green box, though we do send some of this equipment separately, depending upon the needs of the beneficiary. And I think that's incredibly important. We're an organization that doesn't have a one-size-fits-all component to what we do. We custom pack, custom ship, whatever it is that our teams on the ground find in coordination with our beneficiaries firsthand, the types of equipment that they need. And I think that's an important designation because there's a number of organizations that have that one-size-fits-all approach, and that's certainly not ShelterBox. So what you're seeing here is a basic representation of the type of equipment that we do provide. So across the top, you'll see our iconic durable plastic box, which all of this equipment fits within. We've got a children's activity pack to put a smile on the kid's face again. We have solar lighting, water purification, protection from disease with mosquito nets, protection from the elements with thermal fleece blankets and ground mats, elements to cook with and store water, but also a toolkit, both to repair a home and rebuild one, but also to find employment after a disaster is over and the rebuilding phase has begun. Our iconic type of assistance that we provide is our standard disaster relief tent, and this tent is custom designed for us by our organization. And every time, Rushton had talked about innovation, we're constantly innovating the type of equipment that we provide, whether it be sourcing new equipment or improving the equipment that we do have. And because this tent is custom made by our organization, what you're probably seeing here is probably the 65th version, Mark 65 of this tent. This tent can withstand 70-mile-per-hour winds, harsh temperatures in both directions, and it's incredibly safe and secure for the families that we provide them to, and long-lasting as well. I've seen these tents in operation, 6, 7 months, years, and after the disaster is over. And so we believe in providing high-quality equipment whenever we can to the beneficiaries that we support. We also provide what's called a shelter kit. This is a newer piece of equipment that we've been providing over the past couple of years, and it's very simple. But what you see is it's 2 durable, pretty large 6 by 10 meter tarps that can be customized, some basic tools, some roofing nails, some baling wire, so that you can repair a home, but you can also build a temporary structure, 4 walls and a roof, that can ultimately be turned into a permanent structure with more durable outer materials. And we've seen that occur as well. The important part of this shelter kit is disaster relief. Organizations tend to focus on the most vulnerable, those who need the emergency shelter the most. And what you find is we're providing ShelterBox tents to the families who truly need it, and those who have damaged homes, a destroyed roof or damaged walls. At times they could be overlooked. Well, with this shelter kit solution, we're able to help out a wide range of families, which is very important to our organization. Where are we right now? We're still in Nepal after the earthquake that struck earlier this year, the 2 earthquakes. And when the earthquake struck, both Mitty and I were Rotaractors before we joined Rotary. Got a phone call from a Rotaractor who'd worked with our organization in 2007. And he said, "Thank goodness I'm okay, but all the community are living out in the streets. And when there's another aftershock, you can hear the wails throughout the community as people are afraid the buildings around them are going to come down." And these are just some of the photos that you can see here. And in this picture, you can actually see the young man, the Rotaractor, who I talked with just not too long after the disaster. And this is the first tent that was set up after the earthquake, just a couple of days after it occurred. And we focused our initial aid that was pre-positioned in Nepal, because we pre-position aid in areas where we believe they're going to be needed. The first assistance was actually at a hospital where the hospitals were completely overrun. This was used to triage new patients coming in and also to help folks to recover after surgeries. Incredibly important piece of equipment in their time of need. But as the response continued, we delivered tents all across Nepal, and we ended up helping out more than 8,000 families in the initial months. But we're still there now, delivering shelter kits and equipment to help families to get back on their feet again before the cold season continues. Malawi, this is a picture of Malawi where we actually delivered aid earlier this year to roughly 1,300 families. There was massive flooding in the country, and actually I just returned from Malawi, having conducted a monitoring and evaluation trip to go and ask the beneficiaries, how did you like the equipment? Do you have any suggestions for us going forward? Was there any piece of equipment in your shelter box that you found was missing? All important things for our organization so that we can continue that important work and innovation and ensuring that we're providing the type of equipment that our beneficiaries need, not what we think that they need. And the only way you can do that is through continued monitoring and evaluation. Very important. The Syrian refugee crisis, the numbers as a result of this crisis are absolutely heartbreaking. There are 12 million people that have been forced out of their homes as a result of this crisis. There are 4 million people that are displaced outside of Syria. Roughly 2/3 of them are children, and 8 million people that are displaced both inside Syria. And I had a team member that just got back. All of our aid, or most of our aid rather, is delivered through highly trained volunteers called ShelterBox response team members who get into the country at a moment's notice after a disaster and work very hard to ensure that the right people get the equipment. They get it through customs, they find transportation, they work out logistics, they make sure water and sanitation is all taken care of. Well, I was speaking to this team member who had just returned back from Greece, and she shared the devastating story of a small family who made their way to Greece. Essentially, she was on a small island called Lesbos, and this family that she had met shared their story of they left their home because the bombings continued, and they wanted to get this husband and wife and their 4 small children to safety. And they walked for days to get to the border in Syria, of which they had to pay smugglers on both sides, both within Syria and on the border in Turkey, to get their family across the border safely. And then they had to pay smugglers yet again to get themselves 6 miles across the channel to Greece, the closest place in Europe that they could get to. And what they had to go through to do this was heartbreaking. Essentially, they paid smugglers along the coastal town. They had to take a 6-hour bus ride, and the smugglers said, show up at this time. And they did, and the smugglers were there, and they said, just a moment, we'll be back to you. And they go down the beach to help out other families. And then the cops show up, collect this family, and take them 6 hours bus ride back to the main city in the region, only to release them the next day, and for the smugglers to contact them again and say, please get to this location. And finally they do. In the middle of the night, the smugglers show up. They have a boat. They pump it up, a small rubber dinghy made for 4 people, in which 20 people were shoved into. They affix a dilapidated motor, tell the teenager in the back of the boat how to operate the motor, and then they point 6 miles that way, go now. And the family shows up, thankfully, in Greece itself, and there's a welcoming party of Greeks, but they're not there to welcome them. They're there to take their boat and take their motor, profiteering off of the desperation of survivors. Finally, these folks find their way to a ShelterBox camp, and you know the first thing they did, they walked up to our team member and said, we want to help families like ours, what can we do? When we talk about service, the importance of service, you know, it's moments like that really put it all in perspective, at least for me. So I want to share a little bit about my experience with the organization. I started out in 2007 after the Salt Lake City Rotary Convention and joined what's called the ShelterBox response team, or those individuals, those trained volunteers to go out and deliver aid in the field. And I've learned so much along the way, and I'd like to just share some of my experiences with you. In Indonesia in 2010, as you can see here, Mount Merapi in the background in central Java erupted. And this was after an earthquake struck that also caused a tsunami, so it was a triple whammy. We had 3 teams in operation at the same time. My team was focused around the earthquake itself. And we were there working within the communities affected, and you can't just go in and just set up tents on. You need to ensure that there's water and sanitation, that there's security, that you have the rights to use the land where you're putting these tents for multiple months, however long it takes for the families to get back to their homelands. And you know, so often folks think that we just go in and bring in shelter boxes and set up tents, and it's so much more than that. Well, we were sitting having tea at a mosque as you do. All business is conducted on the floor, drinking tea in the heat of the day in Indonesia. And we're sitting there, and the owner of a school comes by, and there's many families, hundreds of families living within their school, 100 families rather. And he's sitting there and he says, look, I'm so glad that you're here, ShelterBox, because my school is my business, because most schools in Indonesia are privately owned. And he said, I need to get back to work again, and ultimately, because you're here, we're able to put these families in tents. And we said, so when are you looking to do that? And he said, tomorrow. And so the next day, we partnered with the largest men's Muslim group in the region and worked very hard to set up enough latrines for 100 families, to bring in clean water for those families, to bring in food and put together some basic common areas so that they could cook their meals. And so the next day we were working all day tirelessly. 50 volunteers had showed up. We broke them into teams, and we all set about setting up 100 tents. And each tent takes about 40 minutes to set up, so it's not quick. And in the hot Indonesian sun, it can take it out of you. Well, the tents are about 8 feet tall, and I wish I could, you could see one in person, and definitely seek to do that someday if you're at a conference. But these tents are about 8 feet tall, and you need to put the poles up, and you need to affix them to the ceiling. And you can either go outside, get a box, bring it in the middle, stand on the box, affix the center, or you can put a small child on your shoulders, and they can help out. And this young man had followed me around for quite a while, clearly wanting to make an impact, because this was the community that he was also going to live in. And until this moment, he was just kind of walking around following. But the moment that we gave him a job, he went around from person to person on our team, helping us to do this and make it a lot quicker. Well, it started to rain in the middle of the day, and kind of brought production to a halt. And thankfully, when the rain passed, everybody came out of the huddled places where they were, ShelterBox tents, and began working again. And I remember at one point I'm on the floor and I'm pounding stakes into the ground, and I look up and there's a family with everything they own on their head, wrapped up in bundles and blankets, their prayer mats, their tools, their clothing, the children's toys. And they were trying to move into the tent as I was setting it up, and it wasn't ready yet. And I had to put my hands up and say, just a moment, I'm not done. And finally we had finished setting up all the tents, and we went tent by tent to make sure the lines were set up correctly, to make sure that everything was just so. And kids are playing around this point. And this is a picture I took with my cell phone at this camp. And I remember looking inside of one of the tents, this piece of equipment that we had just put together moments ago, and the prayer mats were already laid out. And the husband was looking at the tool set that we provide. The mother was looking at the blankets and the different pieces of equipment. And I've got a picture of a child holding a stuffed toy that we provide also in the ShelterBox over their head, clearly happy. And it hit me at that moment that this piece of equipment that was just literally a tent a moment ago had just that quickly become their home. And about the time I made that realization, the gentleman of the house ran out, grabbed me by my arm, shook me, and said, "Merkasi, Merkasi, Merkasi," which is Indonesian for thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's times like that when you really realize that, this box of stuff in it is so incredibly vitally important to those that we serve. And this is the Men's Muslim Charity holding school session at one of the camps that we put together. 2013, I think we all remember where Moore, Oklahoma struck, or the tornado struck Moore, Oklahoma, which was a metropolitan area just south of Oklahoma City. Our teams went out there, and in the metropolitan area itself, there were so many organizations providing assistance. There were so many hotels that families could go to and shelters that were nearby. FEMA was working in operation there and doing a phenomenal job. But out in the rural countryside, where I'm showing you pictures now, it was 40 miles east of Oklahoma City. And these tornadoes struck just a couple of days earlier than Moore, and this area was largely forgotten by the area. People were living out of their cars. This car that you see in front of you, they would basically put a tarp over it during the night. They would wipe off the glass that had fallen and keep their family both within the car and also in store-bought tents. But if you've ever heard the song Oklahoma Where the Wind Comes Sweeping Down the Plains, I won't sing it for you, thankfully, but it's true. The winds are incredibly harsh in Oklahoma, and where you're looking at right now, it's actually on the top of a hill, and these store-bought tents were completely being badgered and blown over by the severe winds that one can experience in Oklahoma. And as you can see here, our tent is standing strong next to this tent that's clearly about to be blown over. And the devastation that a tornado can wreak on a community is just unbelievable. And one of the things that just really struck me was just the fact that in one home it was completely destroyed and another one was okay. And I remember we were putting up a tent next to the hedgerow where a family had lived, and the family was standing there holding hands, a father, his wife, and their small 2-year-old toddler, just watching us the entire time we set up their tent, holding hands. And I walked over, giving them a business card, and said, look, anytime you need anything, just give me a call if you ever have any questions about the tent. And I could tell under their sunglasses they were quietly crying, thankful to receive the type of assistance that we provide. So I want to talk a little bit about Peru, the flooding in the Amazon in 2012. As you can see here, massive devastation. The Amazon flooded 2 meters higher than when it normally floods every year. And what you're looking at here is the roof of a home where people would basically open the thatched roof and go and live inside on scaffolding inside their home. Essentially, they didn't want to leave their homes. There was no dry land for them to go to in this region. But we found an area in this small community called Manikamari where they wanted to move their community to safety, just about half a mile inland. And we arranged transportation, and as you can see here, it takes 2 response team members to carry a box. They're about 150 pounds each, these boxes, incredibly heavy, especially as you're walking through mud and over tough terrain, it can be challenging. So it takes 2 response team members to carry a box, 4 scouts to carry a box, or 1 villager. And whenever I see this, it just puts everything in perspective that these folks are really tough, and their resilience is something to take note of. And the families that we assist, they're always the first line of defense in their own recovery efforts when a disaster occurs. And so when we get to the community, we hold a training. We show people how to set up the tents and how to utilize the equipment and how to use the water purification equipment and why that's so important. And we worked all day in this small community who'd moved their town to safety so they never had to deal with flooding again. And as we pulled everybody together, I let them know, thank you for working so hard, shoulder to shoulder with our team. It was such a pleasure to work with your community and help in whatever way that we could and to provide some comfort. And they all erupted in applause right after this shot, and then lined up one by one to give us hugs, shake our hands, or kiss us on our cheek. Every single villager. It was pretty amazing. Always what I think is what it's all about is when kids can go back to just being kids again. And as you can see here, that's exactly what happened. And this is a shot I also took from my phone in Peru. Well, the town headman basically pulled me aside in Peru and said, look, I just want you to understand that without your help, we couldn't have made this possible. And, as a response team member, I'm just a delivery mechanism for those who truly make our work possible, who are our donors and Rotary clubs and organizations that make our work possible. And so, as that response team member, it hit me at that point that I'm just one cog of this important wheel to make this work happen. So I talked in the beginning about the importance of service above self, and I want to touch on that here. In Taiwan, this was my first deployment in 2009. There was a typhoon that stalled over the mountainous country and dumped 2 years worth of rainfall in a tropical country in just 2 days. And when that happens, the land can only soak up so much water, and massive landslides occur. And as you can see here, this all used to be homes, and we're basically walking over essentially the roofs of places as we're going about and doing our reconnaissance work. And our teams, in order to get out here, we were actually some of the first teams out in the region, and we beat the search and rescue operators from the military. And we were able to do that because we made friends with a 4x4 Jeep club in the region to get out to the most affected areas. And we were working with this unofficial town headman. His name was Mr. Tien. And every day he would show up, and he and I didn't speak the same language, but we had a translator and we were able to work together. And every day he would look at and bring us fresh fruit in the morning, take us around to the community members who would need a shelter box, and show us the places where we could use the land for a considerable amount of time show us the locations where we could procure materials to build the trains, all the important things you need to do when you're setting up a tent. And then every night he would drop us off where we were staying, and the next morning he would be there. One day we were walking down near the river, the river that, according to Mr. Tien, grew by 80 times. It's outstanding to think of how much this river grew. And he pointed at a slag heap right next to him, and he said, "That used to be my car." And as you can see here on this photo, this is Mr. Tien, and there is his car. And if you can see it in the background, there's this red building, and that's what was left of his home, completely destroyed. And the wheels of my head started turning, and I started realizing that Mr. Tien probably didn't have a shelter box, or didn't have a home, and he probably needed a shelter box, but had never asked for one. And then he told me the story of what happens when the floodwaters started to rise, and he said he was the caretaker of his elderly mother. And in Taiwan and in much of the region, it's the men that take care of the elderly parents. There aren't senior citizen communities or assisted living facilities. It's the traditional ways. And as the floodwaters started to rise, he moved his mother to safety on a plateau and watched as their home, where he'd grown up, had washed away. And he made the hard decision at that moment that he was going to send his mother to go live with his sister 2 hours west, and that his job was to stay in the community and help to rebuild. And so I'm listening to all this, and I've already done the math in my head, and I know that we have extra shelter boxes, and I say, "Mr. Tien, you're going to get a shelter box." And he looks at me and speaks through the translator and says something that I'll never forget. He says, "I want to make sure that everybody in this town gets a shelter box before I do." Now, this guy is not a Rotarian, but I think he lives and breathes by the ideals that we all do. Service above self is something that it's really entrenched in who he is. And service is about sacrifice, and this gentleman is in my opinion, an absolute hero. So we argued back and forth, and literally argued. He argued with me on whether or not he would accept the shelter box or not, and we argued. And finally, I'm pretty persuasive, and I got him to agree. And he looked at me and he said, "Fine, fine, fine. I'll take one. Can I borrow your cell phone?" And I said, "Sure." Handed him my cell phone. And then a moment later, I looked, and he had called his mother and was crying and told her that she could come home, the place that they'd always lived. And so this piece of equipment, this box of stuff in it, this tent, is so much more than just a piece of equipment or a box or a tent. It provides a way for families to reunite again in some of the darkest hours of their lives. And I think it's why we all do what we do. So when I had the opportunity to come speak with your...
Sorry to leap in, but we've got about 2 more minutes total. I'd love to get a question or two in, but let me kind of toss it back to you and just kind of think in terms of how you want to use those 2 minutes.
No, I just wanted to, I was going to conclude there and say, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time with the club, and I apologize I went a little bit over.
That's right. Sometimes it happens. Fantastic stuff. I mean, the stories about Indonesia, the stories, like hearing, for example, about your experiences with the men's Muslim group there, working together to make that happen. So often in the news here, we only get kind of this one very kind of weak explanation of the diversity of the Muslim world, and being able to kind of understand from personal experience, how everybody is in that space of, we want to help our communities, we want to make sure that people are okay. And that's very powerful. I want to be able to pass along to Mitty or Shags or Sviatko if they have a question. You guys go ahead and just unmute your camera as well and jump in. We'd love to be able to get a little bit of back and forth before we finish up.
Yeah, Alan, so thanks so much for our presentation. It was awesome. I've heard you speak before. And I have a little bit of background in ShelterBox, as you know. So I'm wondering, though, if you could kind of enlighten us with some more information about the newest partnership that you guys have made with Luminate and the Luminate products that are now in, I think, every shelter box that you guys deliver. I don't know the exact quantity that you guys put in each box. And then how do you guys distribute those? Is it just for the family that gets the box, or kind of talking a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, and I will actually just grab Luminate. It's right here. So the Luminate product is a pretty amazing product. It allows for solar light, and basically you blow it up, and it diffuses light, and it works incredibly well, very bright. And we've been working with Luminade for about 3 years now, and they're a great organization. They were actually founded by a couple of college students in New York, and this concept has really grown. And what we've found is working with our beneficiaries. Actually, it was one of the things I was doing in Malawi was learning how the beneficiaries really, how they felt about the light. And they said it was critical. It was critical for the safety and security of their family members at night. It's incredibly important for women and girls in camp settings, as women and girls, and if you can think, if you bring a community together that they've lost everything, women and girls need protection, and solar lighting can be so incredibly important for that. In addition, they use it to identify other types of issues that could be present, such as snakes. So in Africa, they saw it as incredibly important. And I'm just impressed. We continue to evolve the type of equipment that we provide, and this Luminade light is just a clear example of how our organization does that.
Very cool. I like the way that you guys are reaching out to find common ground and overlap with other folks trying to make a difference in places where suddenly the needs have gone from here to there, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to finish things up, and then I'll ask you, Alan, to give kind of a final word to the group. If there's a kind of a particular piece of encouragement or profundity, then feel free, right? But to all of our members and guests who have just watched this program, who have been part of our meeting this week, thank you for joining us. We really love to have people come in to see what we're doing and to comment. We're going to ask you to do two things. First, as you scroll a little bit farther down the page where this video is embedded, you'll find the I attended survey, and you need to fill that out so that afterwards, especially if you're a visiting Rotarian, you get an email saying that you attended. And for a visiting Rotarian doing a makeup, that's what you can pass along to your club secretary in order to get credit for that makeup. And then a little farther down, you can leave a comment. The comment section is a part that's really important to us. We like learning about each other through the ideas that we share about what gets talked about in these programs, about what gets shared in the meetings, and we love that we're finding ways to bring people from all over the world together to talk about innovative approaches to service. And ShelterBox, I think, addresses that quite beautifully. I know that ShelterBox has been an important piece of Rotary's efforts for some time, and it's great to learn more. So with that, Alan, if you have kind of a last thought, feel free.
Well, so often I hear in Rotary, when's that one time that or when's that moment that you became a Rotarian? What's that one moment that you remember where the kind of light bulb went off? And I think it's completely different for that. I think being a Rotarian is more of a personal journey, and you have many moments like that across that journey. And for me, it's been ShelterBox, but for many of you, it could be something else, whether that be the dictionary project in your community or shoes for children in Honduras. But find that something and go on that journey, because it's so incredibly rewarding. And we have a saying in ShelterBox, and it goes like this: don't do nothing, do something. And whatever that is for you, find that.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much again for good thoughts and the presentation. Shags, thanks for making sure that we've got that as a part of it as well. To everyone else, we hope to see you next week. Join us every week at SiliconValleyRotary.com and tell others. We hope that this has been an experience for you that has led to good insights and plenty of ideas to take back to those that you work with and Rotary with and love and such. So we will see you next week. Take care.